that leads us really beautifully into our final question, which is that it's not enough anymore for those of us who are white to say, I am not a racist. That's too passive. But we have to be anti-racist. We have to stand up. We have to be upstanders. As Kelly said, we have to stand up and advocate for our Black brothers and sisters. And so sort of the big $1 million question, or the answer I think that we all seek, is what can places of worship, mosques, churches, synagogues, temples, etc., what can we do to educate people on the plight of the Black community in this country for more than for the past 400 years, and do more than just post that they have the book or that it's on their reading list, as Kelly mentioned, but do more with that, not just educate themselves, but also to recognize that their silence is part of the problem. And so, Ramaz, let's start with you.
I think I'll speak directly to what masjids should do and what mosques should do. I think that when you understand the history of a people, you'll care a lot more than them. What I've seen now is that people don't know about African Americans. A lot of the immigrants that come in here, like they don't know that 1/3 of the Muslim population in America are African Americans. I'm pretty sure they don't even know that the the slaves that were brought to America were Muslim. That it was probably a dua, that is a prayer that a slave made. Oh Allah, make from my progeny those that are Muslim. That has allowed this country to have Islam. So I think first and foremost, and my thing is, it's all about education, right? Learn about the history of African American Muslims in this nation and how their fight and their plights is what allows for you today to be unapologetically Muslim. It is a direct result from what they've done. And for all the immigrant communities, understand that your physical presence in this country is once more a direct result of the civil rights movement and the fight that was led by African Americans in which they died. The 1965 Immigration Act, which diversified the quota and allowed for people from non-Western hemisphere the opportunity to migrate and come to this country, is a direct result from African American fight. So when you now exist in this country and say, look, as an immigrant, I am here because African Americans fought for me, you will feel indebted. If I gave you a kidney, you will go to your grave respecting me. You will go to your grave remembering the kindness that I've showed onto you. So we should remember that. I'm sorry that this is what it comes down to, right? Because, as Muslims, we're not supposed to hold what people have done for us over their heads. But unfortunately, I'm letting the people know. This is what African Americans have done for us, right? So as immigrants, like your ability to seek education, your ability to go to these Ivy League schools, graduate with the highest degree while wearing your hijab, working as a neurosurgeon, making all this money, or even opening up a corner store in a Black community, all of these things come from the fight that was led to us by African Americans. So my message to the Muslim community, because that's the one that I can address, is don't silence Black voices first and foremost. In the Black community, there's a plethora of knowledge, of brilliance, of scholarship. If you want people to talk about issues, invite them out. For these same institutions, make sure you have a Black imam. Like shout out to Hernessa's Masjid, Adam Center, which is led by Imam Majid, a Sudanese imam. Or even if you're trying to retain a counselor into your masajid, make sure she's African American. There's so many ways in which we can center Black voices, because this is how we're supposed to go forward, right? This is a big machine. White supremacy is a big machine. It's a huge institution, and it's a cycle that's going to continuously be perpetuated. And the only way that we can address this is by collectively acting and not being pawns to white supremacy. So I would say look inward first and foremost, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us and He says, لا يغير الله ما في قوم حتى يغيروا ما في أنفسهم. Allah, God, will not change what's within a society until they change what's within themselves. So look inwards, look at your own institutions, look at your own families, begin to incorporate these Black voices and teach your community where their right as immigrants come from and where their right to be unapologetically Muslim comes from.
Thank you. Khadija, everyone's giving snaps. Khadija, do you want to add anything to what Ramaz is sharing?
She said it very well, and I mentioned some things a little bit earlier. But also keep in mind that we love being Black. We're not going to change because you don't like us. I love being Black. And I will be Black to the day that I die. And it's good that you might have Black imams, but sometimes you need to do more than that. We need to have workshops, or you need to have, like, you know, in your khutbahs or your sermons, talk about racism, you know, call your community out. Have people in your executive leadership that are Black. You know, have these conversations, especially with your elderly population that have these mindsets that are so outdated that shouldn't even be dated. Like, you know, have conversations. My parents were a part of the civil rights movement. They marched in the streets. They were around, Malcolm X was around, MLK. So I was raised reading about Malcolm X, learning about my history and being proud of my history. And now my generation's out here in the streets protesting again. It's like a continuous cycle. It's not funny at all. So I think that you need to have this in your space, especially if your masjid is predominantly non-Black. You need to bring in Black people. You know, like, let us feel welcome. Like we said before, all of us leave masjids where we don't feel welcome in because, you know, just because we're Black. So I think, and also, you know, have us at these big conferences, or, you know, have us on these leadership roles. Stop trying to silence us, especially being Black and a woman and Muslim. And sometimes you go to Muslim organizations, you know, you experience things like this too, like businesses, and, you know, you experience these things too working from organizations. So it's like, it's so many places we have to tackle and look at and dismantle this racism. And it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of sweat and a lot of effort. But I think that if people actually take that first step and hate it in their hearts, and then with their tongues, and then get into action, I think that it could make a difference. And like I mentioned, a bunch of orgs earlier on in this call, reach out to these organizations. They do trainings, they do workshops, they do something like Muslim Art does Racism 101, a basic workshop for you to learn about what's going on about racism. Some people don't even know they're racist, and that's sad. Like, so I think that those are the main things you need to do. And again, I love being Black. So.
Thank you. And Kelly, as you answer that, I want to thank you again and acknowledge that it's after 11:15 in Jerusalem. So we really appreciate your staying on with us so late. And this is such an important conversation. And again, I know it's one that we want to continue beyond this time tonight. But again, Kelly, thank you.
It's okay. I would have been in class right now, and my teacher, who was watching before, who had to leave to teach class, said it was okay. Honestly, everything that these women said applies to the Jewish community. I think when we're having these conversations with people in white communities, we're not calling you out. We're not saying that you're racist and there's no going back. Like, we're calling you in. We want to be respected, and we want to be heard, and we want to be understood. I think it's important for Jews also to understand the history of how Black people built America and their legacy that plays on within the Jewish community, especially after Jews became white after World War II, more specifically. Individual communities have been a part of racial injustice within our own community, from owning slaves in the South, a complex involvement in the civil rights movement, domesticated house workers, economic equality, and just countless times where abuse of power has really hit home. And as Jews also, we learn a lot about generational trauma, and we talk about how being oppressed in our past as Jews like lives on today in our heritage, in our holidays, and the way we speak. And I think we can hold that, and at the same time know that we have Black members of our community who are experiencing trauma right now to this day, and to make sure that they feel that they can belong in these communities. And when I say that remove police officers from the front doors of our synagogues, we're not saying that that we're going to let anti-Semites in. Like, there's a way for us to to protect against outside hate while also taking care of our own community. So read Kendi, read Coates. There's plenty of resources that are shared. I know specifically from the Union of Reform Judaism, their Audacious Hospitality team is out there sharing resources, specifically things written by Chris Harrison and other Jews of color who I admire. They're out there. There are resources. And if you need more direction, you can ask a white ally that you trust. If let the Jew of color volunteer that information at the same time. Because I'm here today doesn't mean I speak for every Black Jew, and it's not only on us to do the work, it's on every single person in this community, specifically the white community, to unlearn this this deep legacy of America, and also it's on everyone to protect the Jews of color, and all Jews, and all people of color, I mean.
Thank you, Kelly and Khadija and Ramaz. I wish we had more time to keep talking because I think this is a conversation that could go on and on and on. But you guys hit on a lot of great issues and a lot of great things that we're going through within your life and things that people needed to hear. So I want to thank you all for coming.